The Honourable Peter Dunn.
Mr Speaker, thank you to the member who's just resumed her seat. And I want to just acknowledge at the beginning of my contribution that this debate has been, I think, on the whole, a very constructive one. There have been points of disagreement, but largely they've been handled in a constructive way, and I acknowledge that from all members. As the member intimated, this is the end for me of a fairly long journey. It began before the 2005 election. In the 2005 Confidence and Supply Agreement with the Labour Party, United Futures secured the establishment of the Game Animal Review Panel, which was chaired by the Honourable Margaret Austin, which ended up recommending the establishment of a Game Animal Council. When the National Party came to power in 2008, we included in our Confidence and Supply Agreement the provision to establish a special committee to pick up those recommendations and develop the Council, and in our 2011 agreement, this legislation was concluded. So finally, Mr Speaker, to be at the point where the bill is about to receive its third reading is the end of a remarkably long journey. A number of people have been involved along the way, and I want to acknowledge immediately the worth of their contributions. I've already mentioned the Honourable Margaret Austin, who's been steadfast, and I know from a message received from her earlier this morning is extremely excited that her work is finally coming to conclusion today. I want to acknowledge the work of Gary Ottman and the members of the Establishment Committee for a job extremely well done over a long period of time. I want to acknowledge the officials whose heart hasn't always been in this bill but have worked constructively to make sure that it was the best it can be. The Select Committee for the consideration that they gave as well. But, Mr Speaker, there's one unsung hero of this bill that I want to mention. And his name is Hayden Cox, who was my ministerial assistant for a number of years, who has worked on this piece of legislation as a labour of love for a very long time. And I know that Hayden will be an extremely happy young man today to see that his work, his dream, his perseverance, his sheer determination has paid off in the passage of this bill. He will be joined in that pantheon of people to be acknowledged by Tim McCarthy and Bill O'Leary of the New Zealand Deerstalkers Federation, and in an earlier time Alec McIver, and a number of other recreational interests around New Zealand. This is very much their day. Mr Speaker, I want to deal with one point that dominated the Committee of the Whole stage consideration of the bill, and which I think is largely, with the greatest of respect to members opposite, a red herring. And that is the matters that the member was referring to previously about the expansion of the ambit of the Council by way of the SOP that was passed by the Committee of the Whole. Mr Speaker, let me repeat what I said at that point. When this bill was introduced, for reason of issues related to the protection of property rights, it related only to the conservation estate, and obviously, by definition, that limited its scope to apply to recreational hunters only as the major users of the conservation estate in that regard. Once the bill had passed through the Select Committee, there were strong representations made by a number of other groups with interests in land management, in tourism, in hunting in its broader forms, that they should now be brought under the ambit of this legislation, not for the least reason of which was the fact that the levy mechanism placed on trophies that the bill introduces would affect them as well. So I received, as the Associate Minister at the time, those submissions, and I must confess to the House that I was at first a little sceptical of them. It did sound a little bit like Johnny's come lately once the bill had been passed, and I said to them, if you come back to me with a document signed by all of the people you claim that support the inclusion of a wider definition, I will be prepared to take the matter forward. And they did, and the SOP reflects that. I do not see that as sinister. I do not see that as changing the scope of the bill. In fact, it broadens it. It makes it a much more inclusive platform. It makes the Council, I think, a much more credible body. And I note, and I said this during the Committee of the Whole stage, that Mr Ottman has given a message this morning that the changes proposed are utterly consistent with the recommendations of the Establishment Committee. And if one looks at the provisions of the Act, or the bill rather, regarding the membership of the Council, there is a specific statement there about recreational hunting. So I do not accept, although I understand why it's being made, the criticism that we've heard during the Committee of the Whole stage. Mr Speaker, one other point that has aroused some attention has been, and I think if I hear the Green Party correctly, it's mainly been their point, that the hitherto overarching role of the Department of Conservation in management in this area is being diminished by the establishment of this council, which will have its own responsibilities. Mr. Speaker, I respect we have a difference of opinion on this. I actually think that devolution is a good thing, because you will have more stakeholders involved in the decision-making process, greater commitment, and the value that they espouse of wanting to conserve a resource so that they can use a resource can be given greater effect through this proposition. So, Mr. Speaker, I am very happy today. I'm very pleased to see this council come to fruition. I have great confidence in the future that lies ahead. And I suspect, actually, from the tone of some of the debate opposite, members opposite are also quietly confident that this council will be successful. Mr. Speaker, it is an important day for the hunting sector in New Zealand, recreational hunters as well as other hunters. It's an important day for all of those who value our outdoor heritage and their ability to have a say in its management and their ability to contribute to future policy development. So, sir, congratulating all who were involved in bringing the bill to this stage, I am very happy to let the debate proceed and the vote take place in due course.
Eugenie Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pleased to take a call on the third reading of the Game Animal Council Bill. When this bill